Welcome to Visceral Reactions, your regular stop for irregular amounts of horror. You know what we say here, the more the horror, the more the excitement.
The more horror?
More horror. I'm Matthew Germanis.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. That's a little bit of Stephen Fry QI for those one of you who listen to QI or watch it like I do. That's going to be prevalent. I'm going to explain that later on in the episode. So don't you worry, that will pay off. And I'm also Quinton Williams. Hello.
We've all heard the legends. Watermelon seeds will sprout in your stomach.
Yep.
There's a killer lurking in your back seat.
Wait, what?
And those baby alligators we've been flushing down the toilet have grown into blind albino giants.
You got alligators as a kid?
Yep.
Oh.
Urban folktales are everywhere, existing to remind us that even modern society contains inexplainable terror, where the dark of unknown alleys is eclipsed by the unknown darkness of the mind. Louis Teague's Alligator and Bernard Rose's Candyman use urban legends to reveal the fears brought on by the legacies of environmental carelessness and racial violence. Regardless of whether you believe or not, whether the sewers are dense with alligators or the mirror contains a bloody hook, the fear is real, and the fear is all that matters.
We're talking about urban legends, people.
Yep. So, urban legends, they're everywhere. That's the whole point. It's that everyone has heard from someone that they know, and then someone that person knows, once experienced something, whether it's, I don't know, like going outside and catching a pneumonia from having your hair wet, or which is one that I grew up with.
Me too.
Or, you know, that if you pick up a hitchhiker, that like they're gonna murder you.
They actually might.
Yeah, and that's what is scary about urban legends, is that there's always like some kernel of truth.
Yep.
To all of these, and both of the movies today are taking this story that at one point existed, Candyman much more real than Alligator, but still, but still like something that people genuinely believed, and turning them into something that speaks to the fears that we have. So with Alligator, the myth, of course, is that at some point during the 50s, 60s, 70s, you know, as people are traveling all across the country and visiting states in the Gulf South, where alligator farms are an actual thing.
I went to an alligator farm on a field trip in like middle school.
There you go. Alligator farms only exist in movies for me. So,
well, you never grew up in Louisiana.
No, but what's funny is that I did grow up with the idea that alligators were in the sewers.
Good old New York.
Exactly. This just goes to show like how these things exist even without having to exist. As the son of a plumber, my dad in the late 80s, early 90s owned a heating and plumbing business in Manhattan that specifically catered to commercial boiler rooms, like to commercial boilers. And he occasionally took me to work.
Oh, cool.
To, you know, when I was a kid, and I could like fit inside of these boilers.
Oh God. So did he make you do the dirty work?
Kind of. Yeah. And so like that world of not even just the sewers, but like the world of pipes.
Right.
You know, is something that as a kid was very real to me. And
were you a big fan of Super Mario Brothers then?
I was not. I never had a Nintendo. But what I did have was an absolute love of reptiles.
Reptiles are cool.
Yeah, and I still do.
Yeah,
but
me
as
too.
a kid, like, you know, you're obsessed with them.
Yeah, like that dinosaur thing.
Yeah.
Kids love dinosaurs because they're big, massive lizards.
Exactly. And so I honestly believed the urban legend. I was like, oh, because there's like, if you flush something down the toilet, it's going to go into the sewer.
It of course survives, you know?
And it has to. And so I can honestly see, especially this is like one of the things that comes with living in close to around New York City.
Right.
Like you occasionally see on the news somebody's apartment got raided because they had like 15 anacondas.
Oh,
And you're
wow.
like, what the hell
In
is
a small, like, New York apartment?
Exactly. But like people like exotic animals like that should never be pets. Like at least once a year, someone
People keep like pythons. I guess pythons would be different than like anacondas.
but still,
Right.
like you shouldn't have these things as pets. And it's the amount also that
Right.
that's a big thing. It's like someone will have like, like who needs all of these reptiles
in such a small enclosed space.
Exactly. And or like someone will have like a tiger in like, and like
Tiger can't even fit through the door.
I feel like someone in Brooklyn like had a tiger or like a lion or something.
He had a cousin named Vinny, and he's like, "Hey, I got a tiger for you. You want a tiger? $50."
And it's got a couple of zeros after that.
Right.
But yeah, no, like it's always a thing. Like there's always like someone that pops up with this. So the idea of an alligator that you can literally just buy now online, and have them shipped to you.
For alligators, I don't think you can just buy alligators. Maybe not like at PetSmart. Maybe you have to go into some nefarious black market dark web stuff.
No, I think you can actually like buy them, like not from PetSmart obviously, but like I think you can get them online.
Maybe I just don't know what alligator farms are for, even though I went to one as a kid for a field trip. I didn't retain any of it.
That was a bad field trip then. So
no, it was cool. You got to pet the little baby alligators. You get to hold them.
So like that's exactly what these myths are about.
Yeah.
It's like somebody, and not just one person, like not like some crackpot with a tinfoil hat, but like someone who, like people, like this is a communal belief that there are numerous people who, if you ask them to go into the sewers, not just like dealing with like whatever comes with being in a sewer, but also just like they'd be like, I don't want to go because they're alligators.
Yeah, or mole people.
Exactly. Alligators trained by mole people. We don't know.
Mole people raised by alligators.
Exactly. Some weird like inversion stuff. And so there was these cases of people finding like an alligator. Like just like one alligator. It's happened as recently as like 10 years ago.
Now, I'm assuming you're not talking about a full-fledged grown alligator. You're talking because that's the baby ones.
Exactly. Well, it was like a 2-foot alligator.
That's kind of big, actually.
Yeah, it was like 18 inches. So it was a foot and a half.
That's a big boy.
But like it literally like in Astoria in like 2010, someone just watched an 18-inch alligator come out of a drain. And then like the cops showed up and they were like, we have no idea where this came from. And I was like, well, it came from the sewer. And it's like, it's moments like that where people are like,
I told you.
Exactly.
They're
like,
in the
I'm pretty
sewers.
sure they're down there. And so it's this myth that alligator is dealing with. You flush it down the toilet.
Yep.
And eventually shit's going to hit the fan in the form of an alligator that's going to grow up to be ridiculous. And the reason why that this alligator is going to grow up to be ridiculous has a lot to do with things that happened in the 70s that were intentionally trying to prevent alligator from happening, not as a movie, but as a concept. The 70s can very much be known or classified as, legally speaking, the environmental decade, because of Richard Nixon. Which is
tricky dick.
Yep, and maybe the trickiest part of this dick is that here's one thing that he did that's actually really, like, not only really good, but like he is actually like one of the best presidents when it comes to environmental law, and not even because he cared, but because he didn't fight the growing environmental movement,
which is weird because you would think the hippies would be very big into that.
Yeah.
And he hated hippies.
Yeah.
He hated them.
I think this was one area where he just wasn't
I can't fight him.
Yeah, like
too strong.
His animosity. Because I mean he genuinely, like, he did care for animals.
Right.
He's the reason why the National Zoo got pandas from China.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's why Nixon went to China.
Yeah. To get the pandas.
Yeah, to get the pandas.
Yeah, no, that's like honestly like a theory that I've had for a long time is that the real
He
reason
just
why
smuggled them in like a coat.
he was like, I really love pandas.
I want to get a panda.
Yeah.
Or the White House.
Those sons of bitches aren't going to keep the pandas from me, and but in 1970, so this is what kicks off the decade of like environmental legislation, is that he signs into effect the National Environmental Policy Act, which opened the door for all of the legislation that was to come. We're talking like throughout the decade, we have laws, we have acts that protect and then enforce the protection of clean air, clean water, endangered species.
Good thing we've really kept with that list.
Yeah, safe drinking water. It's sad that there has to be a distinction between Clean Water Act and the Safe Drinking Water
It
Act.
should be the same.
The same thing, right? The Clean Water Act is more about protecting like the oceans.
Okay. Can't drink that.
Yeah, can't drink those. And then, this is what I want to get to, with the end of the 70s, we get a couple of acts that have like direct effect on Alligator.
Oh no.
So in 1975 and 1976, back-to-back years, we get 3 of these environmental acts. We get the Hazardous Materials Transportation Act, Solid Waste Disposal, and the Toxic Substances Control Act.
You can't just put that in a hole in the ground anymore.
Yeah, and because of that, because of things not being disposed of properly, the month after Alligator comes out, we get CERCLA, which is known more as Superfund.
Cool.
Superfund sounds like, something like, what is this, the Justice League?
Super fun.
But really, it's just because people didn't want to say the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act of 1980.
I see.
So yeah, and that's thanks to Jimmy Carter. And what this did was it taxed chemical manufacturers for the cleanup of hazardous materials. So basically, if these companies were not going to clean up their mess on their own, which due to an investigation that resulted in over 40,000 of these sites being found.
Oh no.
And like there were like 12 or 1300 of them that were considered high priority. Basically, the government would tell the company who was responsible, this is your mess. You literally, like, you have to clean it up.
Yeah.
And if they didn't, then they would be taxed, and the government would hire contractors to clean it up. In the event that a at-fault party could not be found, expense was on the burden of the taxpayer.
Damn it.
And in like 30% of these cases, taxpayers were, charged.
That makes unfortunate amount of sense.
Yeah. And so in the late 70s,
right,
we get this growing concern of hazardous materials just existing and like ruining things to a degree that it's going to hurt like the very fabric of our society.
Yep.
And in Alligator, we see a chemical manufacturing company experimenting with a growth hormone.
Got to make the big dogs.
To make dogs bigger.
I don't know if it's this or dog anything
bigger.
They use dogs.
Yeah, and what they're doing with the dogs who die is they're dumping them
in the sewer.
And so you get a little baby alligator who starts feeding on these steroid dogs.
Yep.
And what you get is a
big boy
fucking alligator, the likes of which no one has ever seen.
Not since the like Cretaceous period.
Yeah, really. This is like
a 30-foot big old chunkin' alligator.
Yeah. The film begins not only with this shady, completely unethical pharmaceutical company, but we also we get the baby alligator who, if we're to assume that this is the same alligator at the opening of the film, a little girl has her pet alligator from a Florida road trip.
A very shady Florida road trip where a guy's leg almost gets bitten off by actual real alligators.
Yeah. Now, the movie isn't always clear about where it takes place.
No.
Because the little girl who ends up being the herpetologist in the film, Dr. Kendall.
Maybe.
She maybe lives in Missouri, but she's definitely in Chicago.
Yeah, it takes place in the opening where she gets the alligators, like in Missouri, which is weird in itself.
Because like,
Are there alligators in Missouri?
no, like they're in Florida. Like she gets it from Florida,
Then
but
they
then
go
they're
back.
driving back. But
That's a long drive.
The sign says now entering Missouri.
Okay.
But we never see a now entering Illinois sign. And what makes it even more confusing is that Robert Forster's character, as we later see, the cop, Madison, he was formerly in St. Louis. He was part of the St. Louis PD.
Yeah.
But we get clearly that he had a very traumatic incident where his partner was killed and he transferred. But it doesn't always make clear that it's in Chicago because some of the cars still have Missouri license plates.
Yeah.
But at the very least, I think in a way, this is actually really interesting. For me, it's less sloppy and more of...
I mean, they had like, what, $1 million budget?
Yeah.
It was probably sloppy.
The result is that it's not fixed to one location.
Okay.
Like the alligator urban myth
Oh, right. It's everywhere.
is everywhere.
Okay.
It's funny that this is something that I only ever heard growing up taking place in New York City,
Or in
which would make
big
sense.
cities.
Then with this movie, it's like, oh, it's in Chicago.
Yeah.
But then there are also incidents where it's happened in Los Angeles. So it's like it's definitely an urban problem, quote unquote.
Yep.
But the film doesn't make it such a specific thing, which I think helps make it even more possible elsewhere. But so at the very least, it's like a Midwestern thing.
Or it could just be a big goof.
Yeah, or I'm gonna give it credit, for that. So we get the alligator feeding on these dogs and growing really big, and suddenly people start noticing their dogs disappearing.
Yeah.
And Robert Forster loses a dog, and he gets a new one. He gets a new one
from the most shady pet store owner I've ever seen.
Gutschel.
He is slimy. His pet store is slimy.
Yeah. Gutschel, like you immediately
push him and like he slides on the concrete.
Yeah.
He's that slimy.
Gutschel is played by Sidney Lasik. That anyone who's seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest should recognize him as one of the, for lack of a better word, one of the inmates in the group. He behaves very, very odd.
Yeah.
With Robert Forster. He mentions his onslaught of male pattern baldness.
Yeah, that is a theme in this film. I don't know where it goes. Maybe it's a weird commentary about toxic masculinity because there's a bit of that in this, but it's not. They don't do much with it.
No.
Maybe it's like an unrunning joke that the screenwriter thought would be funny.
Who knows? But it's there. It's there.
Sure.
And so Madison goes to investigate this, and a mutilated body is found in the sewer.
They find
an arm. Yeah. And they have no idea where it comes from. And they definitely don't know where the rest of the person is.
No.
And then Gutschel, after going to this pharmaceutical
to deliver test subjects.
Yeah. Because apparently we see him kidnapping stray dogs.
Not even stray. They have collars on those dogs. Those are someone's dogs.
Oh yeah, no, but like stray, like no one's walking.
Right.
Yeah, like loose dogs or like
my dog's loose.
Yeah,
you hate it when you're like you fumble with your pockets and loose dogs just fall out.
Yeah, just loose dogs, and then and so Gutschel just takes them and brings them to be tested on and eventually killed. And then he goes to dispose of the body, and then
in the sewer.
He
could, what he could have done? Could have dumped it in the ocean. They would never find them.
Yeah, or like a landfill.
Yeah, landfill. But what if you start getting like monster rats or, God forbid, monster sharks? That's a whole different film that came out 5 years prior.
Yeah, exactly.
We should point out this is a ripoff of Alligator is a knockoff Jaws.
It's one of numerous movies that came out post 1975, where studios tried to cash in on the giant monster animal.
Yep.
Just 2 years before, the film's own writer, John Sayles, wrote the script for Piranha.
Ooh.
So there's that.
Sequel famously directed by James Cameron.
So I'm glad that you brought up Jaws right now, because there's something really, really beautiful about this relationship with Steven Spielberg. Whereas the movie exists because Jaws exists.
Yeah.
There's a very wonderful scene in Jurassic Park that exists because of this movie.
That's crazy to me.
Yep.
What is the scene?
It is the scene where Gutchell dies, where he gets killed by the alligator. He goes into the sewer, and so Gutchell and Dennis Nedry by Wayne Knight, played by Wayne Knight, they're both wearing Hawaiian shirts.
Oh no.
They both have glasses.
That's great.
You know.
Can we prove that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. So when Gutchell gets killed, he's like looking at the alligator, and he like fumbles and then gets eaten
by nauseous jump cuts.
Yeah. So when the alligator eats him, it cuts immediately to the water, turning red with his blood, in the same way that after Nedry gets killed by the Dilophosaurus, instead of showing him being killed, Spielberg cuts to the water running down the rocks and the blood entering. It's like the timing.
I can't imagine Spielberg going into the theaters to watch this, and he's like, I'm gonna use this.
I mean, I have to imagine that someone would have been like, hey, look, there's another one of your movies, Offspring, coming out. You got to see it. I mean, he was buddies with John Sayles. Okay. So at the very least, I could see John Sayles being like, hey, Steven.
Please watch my movie.
Yeah. And then it's such a great moment where Sidney Lasic's character gets eaten by the alligator because you don't know what does it.
Yeah.
Like you don't.
I mean, if you bought a ticket for the movie Alligator,
you should know. Yeah. But like but in the same way that like you know that you're watching a shark with Jaws, but you don't see in the beginning
what it is.
Really. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's quick. It's, it's not, we're not selling everything just yet. And
very Hitchcock connoisseur, the director of this film.
Yeah. I mean, it's there. Like the influence is there. Like
you could say that, but you could also, again, point it to low budget and them not having a convincing enough animatronic.
Regardless of the why, we have the what happened, and so it's there. And so we get, for the next hour plus, we get increasing glimpses of
the boy
of Ramon.
You can name him Ramon?
Oh no, that's his name. That's the.
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah, that's
the girl.
Yeah, the doctor. She named him Ramon, which is great because Robert Forster has a Ramon Santiago poster over his bed.
They were meant for each other.
Yep.
Even though he's kind of an asshole.
Yeah, he makes up for it by killing the.
He does apologize.
Yeah. So we get some of the mainstays of creature features like this, where we have politicians who are more concerned with their own.
Mayor wants to keep the sewers open.
Yep,
it's 4th of July.
It's 4th of July. We have a mayor who is worried more about re-election and how this is going to reflect on him, even though everyone knows that there's a giant alligator in the sewers that's killing people. We have a chief of police who is more concerned with bending to pressure from Slade, who owns the pharmaceutical company that is testing on these dogs, and on the mayor.
Yep.
Which, in his defense, he's in a impossible situation. But still,
I don't know if he's in like the pocket of the mayor.
I don't think so. I think it's just like he
doesn't want to lose his job.
Yeah, he's just getting strong-armed, and he's just unfortunately having to deal with two people more powerful than him who control the funding. He can't do anything. So he has to come down on Madison when he tries to do things the right way by enlisting the help of Dr. Kendall. I think Robin Riker is her name, the actress's name. And she is the leading authority on herpetology in the area. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when she, in one of the most interesting moments, she disproves the myth that the film is based on. And it's wonderful how they do it. Because in the beginning, they don't know what it is, but they think that they're like, this is probably a
Well, they figure out in the most blasé way that I'm actually like, I respect you, film, because instead of having like half of the movie, I guess it is half of the movie, well, a long, big portion of the movie, because there's the buildup at the beginning of them not believing the cop, because he and his partner went down, his rookie partner went down to investigate the sewers, and the
kid gets eaten.
Rookie got. Madison wakes up at a hospital.
And there's this reporter
Yeah.
who's very, very intent on busting Robert Forster's balls throughout the entire movie until he himself is eaten by the alligator.
Yeah, he goes to investigate the sewers because he hears about talk of mad alligators running, and he goes, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Let's investigate. And he has his camera, and Ramon finds him.
And he eats him.
Yep. But they find the camera.
Which had the pictures of the gator on.
And the chief's like, holy shit, you were right.
Yeah. And so they go back to Dr. Kendall, and they're like, hey, this is an alligator, right? And she's like, yeah, but it shouldn't be
this big.
Because as we learn, thanks to science, an alligator should not be able to survive in a sewer because they don't have access to sunlight.
Yep.
And because they're cold-blooded animals, they need sunlight to live.
Also, there's no food.
There's no food.
Rats?
No. Also, the amount of disease due to human waste would literally kill the gator within like weeks.
Props to the actors in the film because
they keep a straight face.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, they filmed most of this film in actual sewers.
Yeah.
So good on you guys.
And so, like, you know, if you're listening to the doctor, like, here's an authority. Like, this woman is, like, it literally wrote the book on Alligator.
Madison's I'm almost betting homage to Chief Brody, Martin Brody, flipping through the shark books and seeing the pictures. He's doing the same thing in the Alligator book.
And one of the illustrations is the alligator eating a dog for whatever reason.
Hey, subtle.
Yeah. You know, we get the information that like an alligator, even if it were to survive, it should never be more than a couple of feet long.
Yeah.
Because the doctor can't even believe when a little boy tells her, the kid's probably like 12, that the alligator's like a car length. Yeah. Not even including the tail. I love that.
That scene comes a bit later.
Oh yeah. No, but I'm just saying that like that there's like scientifically this alligator
shouldn't exist.
Yeah. Like at the very least, this is a world where this alligator is an absolute aberration.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an aberration because of us.
Good job, us.
Yeah, good job, us. Way to go. We get all of these reasons why it can't happen, and yet it is happening. During a time where things that people never thought would possibly happen in regards to like environmental concerns.
Yep. Even
suddenly they're happening.
Yeah, and even like scientifically and ethically as well.
Yeah. And it's like, and so, you know, we get a classic like Frankenstein-esque tale of science where this is what happens when you mess with things you're not supposed to.
You were so preoccupied with if you
could.
You never thought, and you never stopped to think if you should.
Exactly.
Wow, we butchered that.
Yeah. And so
that's chaos.
Yeah, exactly. Man goes into the sewer and
man gets eaten by an alligator.
Yeah, alligator rules the world.
Yeah.
So we have the giant alligator.
Big boy.
And now this alligator ends up coming out of the sewers.
So what happens is once the chief's like, "Oh, like shit, you're right, alligators." His voice was a lot more smoky than that. He smokes like 5 packs a day.
Yeah. Stephen Gatso, who's most famously Pentangeli in Godfather 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they get like the whole police squad to lure out this alligator in this one entrance. And he doesn't show up. I don't know if they're like, well, we tried to, maybe there wasn't an alligator after all, you stupid idiot. Then it cuts to the most awesomest badass scene in the entire film. It's fucking awesome. So the alligator, while these kids are like playing street ball, bust out of the concrete.
Yeah.
And just starts eating. I don't think he eats any of the kids, but he just starts.
He eats a cop.
He eats a cop.
The kids are smart enough to run away.
Yep.
One of the kids, the kid who explains the size of the alligator to the doctor and Madison, runs into his house and grabs a knife. Like that's gonna do anything.
I'm gonna kill this gator.
But good on him that he's trying.
Tried.
He's trying. He's doing his civic duty. And so, yeah, so we get this, it doesn't just happen like once. Like we get like, it's almost like the chest burster scene.
Yes.
And honestly,
So
like
cool.
this is coming a year after Alien.
Yep.
Like we have a lot of moments in the sewer where it's dark when the reporter gets killed.
Yeah, and when it's dark,
that is so cool because his camera, it's the flash from his camera that keeps going off.
Yep.
And it's like a strobe light effect in a club scene.
Yeah.
And we just get these really quick flashes, literally, of the gator and of him being eaten.
And you get like in the background the shadow of the gator's mouth opening. It's really cool.
Who is it? I think it was Leonard Maltin who said that if you're going to make a movie about a big alligator, this is how you do it.
Yes, you get some like good shots of because they have like two gators. I call them. One is they actually film a real gator. They just use kind of crude miniatures. But it's mostly effective. It's just that there's that thing about when you are trying to film something really big, you have to slow it down to mimic like the weight of it. They don't really do that. So it's just like a massive thrice the size of a regular alligator moving the same speed. So it kind of takes you out of it. Also, in comparison to the animatronic gator and the real gator's a bit skinny.
Yeah.
But besides that, it's effective enough. But you got like,
the real gator we see more in profile, whereas with the animatronic we'll see like head on or from like top down.
You see like his head. Usually use the real gator for when it's moving.
Yeah, and so because of that, it can look like if you're really focusing on the size, like it can look a little jarring.
Yeah.
Especially when it cuts from one to the other.
Yeah.
But it is nice to see that a real alligator is on there.
Hopefully not, it treated well.
Oh, yeah. No. I would hope that the American Humane Society would be there to investigate it. If not, I mean, that gator is going to get really big and it's not going to be happy. Or it'd be hilarious if just like that giant alligator, they're just like, all right, back to the sewer you go.
That's where he lives.
Yeah, he's a sewer gator. And so we have with the animatronic gator, this is coming again just 5 years after
it's
Jaws.
Pretty for what like you see, it's pretty good.
It's really not bad
for the small budget. Like
I
think $1.5 million.
Like it could have looked a lot worse. Like they could have had somebody in a alligator costume crawling on all fours.
Oh God!
If they really like, they could have pulled a Godzilla. They could have had somebody just in a suit.
Yeah,
like,
I always think that's effective.
Oh yeah, no, because Godzilla, you expect it.
Yep.
Like if anything, you want it.
I do.
Like I want the man in the suit.
But with the small amount of screen time we get with animatronic gator, and they don't do much with it to like it eating and stuff. But like the bit you see, it's pretty effective.
The two parts of the gator that move the most, and honestly, these are the most important. We see the tail, especially at the end, thrashing a limousine where pharmaceutical owner Slade.
Yep.
I say pharmaceutical, the chemical manufacturer Slade.
Old man.
Yeah. Where he's in, we see the giant tail.
Yep.
That they had to make to scale, unintended, just destroying this car. And obviously, the most important, we need the head.
Yeah.
And the head they make look pretty realistic.
Yeah.
And as much as you can have something chomping down on a person without actually killing them, they do a pretty good job of making it look like people are getting eaten.
Yep.
Or at least killed by, having blood just like, coming all out of them. I would be really curious to see if this movie had to exist without Jaws in the background, what the animatronic would look like. I mean, it's impossible to know, but like it's interesting to think of like, how would they have done it without that benchmark of how to do the giant thing?
Yeah, animatronic thing.
Yeah.
And have it work properly.
Yeah. And because like the way that the mouth moves, like honestly, it's not that different from the way that the T-Rex's mouth moves in Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
You can see them really trying to get the movement as fluid as possible
with what they're given.
Yeah. And so, for being a creature feature, for being all of these, for being fun, and for being like, a great like Saturday night movie, like late at night, and just like, not and not even something to like roast or anything like that, but like just something genuinely to have fun with.
Yeah.
I think, again, just like so many of the things that we've talked about, like one of the brilliant things is that it's able to pull off the eco horror without being explicit. You know, it's not like, you know, the chemical manufacturing company is like, other than the few scenes that they're in, they're not there.
No.
But like, you never forget that they're the ones behind all of this. And it's not even intentional. Like, they're not like trying to make this gator. And so the movie is really speaking to, like I said, to our carelessness, especially at this time. Like, you know, we have all of these new, like all of these laws are new. I mean, when it comes to like public safety, and you know, all across the board, I mean, by 1980, it was only legally required to wear seatbelts for like a few years prior to that.
Oh God.
Like, you know, like when my brother and sister were born, like they were not required. Like my mom was not legally required to put seatbelts on them. And and it's like it's bananas to think that. I think this goes to show that like this is still a time where people think that the country's kind of invulnerable. Yeah. Or not even the country, but that they themselves as like, as Americans, like as a family, as just people existing in a country where there really aren't as many consequences. And then like, this is, you know, the time that like the hole in the ozone layer is being discovered. And all of these things where people are suddenly like, oh, you know, all those aerosol cans you use to like spray on hairspray and deodorant and all that. Well, you actually are killing the world. Damn it. Yeah. And so,
and their response to this is like 80s, more hair.
Yeah.
I want my hair to, when you hit it, it's like metal.
Yeah. You have this alligator being an example of the planet striking back.
Yeah. And in ways it probably didn't imagine it would be. And like, oh, okay.
Yeah. But it's like it's trying to correct itself.
Yeah.
You know, again, it's nature finding a way. You know, and I think fascinating that all of these creature features, like they'll show, you know, like with Jaws, like the shark is not a mutant.
No, it's just the only thing with the shark is it eats people, what sharks really ever do. Yeah. And it's bigger than most sharks.
Yeah.
By like, even like sharks today don't really get up to 20 feet. Brucey is 25.
Yeah.
2 tons of them.
But like there's nothing, like at no point during Jaws are we ever supposed to think that this can't happen.
Because it did.
Exactly. Now with Alligator, it's a step beyond that. It's the fear part of the mind. That's not exactly rational. That's like, well, I guess if an alligator lived in the sewers,
anything can,
and feasted on some radiated, you know, or genetically modified animals, then yeah, I mean,
sky's the limit.
Exactly. The film is showing where, or like showing how we are messing things up, but it's not being preachy about it.
No.
It's not
the scientist lady or the cop going like, "There's a problem. You guys got to fix it. Look what you're doing."
Yeah. Like the problem with the manufacturing company is more of like an ethical thing. Yep. It's not like you're killing all of us. Like you're at fault. Like it's like you shouldn't be testing on animals like this.
No, you at least be, if you are dumping them somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere else. Somewhere that, you know, alligators can't get them.
No. And turn into giant mutants.
Yeah.
And kill people using a heavily synthesized ripoff of the Jaws theme.
Yeah. And unlike Jaws, which spawned, 3 sequels or 4?
Yes, each one progressively worse than the last.
Were there 4?
Yes. Jaws, okay. Jaws 2, Jaws 3D.
And then The Revenge?
The Revenge, Jaws the Revenge.
Yeah. Alligator only had 1 sequel 10 years later, and it's technically not even a sequel. It's more of like a very bad remake.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And if you're wondering where can I watch these 2 movies, unfortunately, they don't exist really.
You can find the full version of Alligator on YouTube. It's just there.
For now,
because they're doing a Blu-ray release.
Yeah. Even better, it's coming out in 4K. Like, just in case, just the crispest of of color and tone coming out.
You can finally see inside the sewer because the sewer's dark. It's pitch black.
It is. And we're going to go from eco horror to a horror that doesn't take millions of years of fucking up to come back to bite us.
More like 150 years.
At least.
Depending on where you want to look at this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the violence in this, is over 400 years old by now.
Oh, even more.
Yeah. All right. So I don't know if there's any reflective material.
There's our phones.
Yeah. So
do cameras count as mirrors?
I don't want to test it.
Are you about to do it?
No. God,
okay.
No.
Even though I know that this film is fictional, parts of it at least, I still would never do it.
Oh, I'm not even gonna bring in the fictional part. Like, honestly, I don't mess with that.
No,
like that.
I don't do Bloody Mary. No, I don't even.
Yeah, no, I don't.
There's that back of your mind thought, like, what if it is real?
Yeah, no,
like, I'm not even gonna attempt.
No, like I've never done it. Like my friends and I, like we knew that both of these things existed as kids. We never messed with them.
No, I never will.
Yeah, so I'm going to say it once. So the myth behind Candyman, has to do first the origin comes from Clive Barker's story, The Forbidden.
Yes. How familiar are you with Clive Barker?
Not other than that he's responsible for Hellraiser.
Yes,
that's all I got.
I haven't read any of his stuff. Apparently he does good stories because he writes a ton of them and they get adapted. I've seen like the first 3 Hellraisers. They're pretty good. I haven't seen like beyond that.
Yeah.
I haven't seen where Hellraiser goes into space. But like the first 3, honestly, they're pretty good. Clive Barker has this interesting thing. I don't know how to describe his horror. I guess you could just call it modern but gory H.P. Lovecraft in a way. Because he has his stories are revolving around these otherworldly things like Candyman or like the Cenobites and all that, and the Forbidden, the Cube, and all that. So
the Forbidden, it takes place in
Liverpool.
In Liverpool. Which is where Clive Barker is from. Close enough. He's definitely British.
I thought he was American. I'm dumb.
He's super British.
Okay.
I know that because I watched an interview with him.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. Part of the basis for that story was this legend of the Hook, of this killer who would go around like terrorizing people who had a hook for a hand. When you take this story and this urban legend, and you mix it with the very all too real story of Ruthie Mae McCoy.
Yes, that was the most daunting thing about this. There's a bit of the film talking about how this woman named Ruthie Jean in the film, in the very real Cabrini Green, very real place, she's killed in her apartment because someone on the opposite side of her apartment using a connected like mirror cabinet breaks in through that way and kills her. And they don't really hide the name. They use their first name, but they're more or less referencing that really genuinely real event in the film. And it's almost morbidly genius how it fits in.
When the movie comes out in 1992, just 5 years prior, Ruthie Mae McCoy is murdered. Now, she was a resident of one of the housing projects not far from Cabrini Green.
Oh, I thought it was in Cabrini Green.
Yeah, it was like it's like very close to it, like almost neighboring. She was a woman who had struggled with mental illness. She showed signs of schizophrenia, and she had trouble keeping a job because of it.
Right.
And so she had like just recently, before she was murdered, she just recently been approved for like supplementary income. So she was planning on getting out of this environment. One night on April 22nd, 1987, she called the cops and said that someone was breaking in through her bathroom cabinet. I guess with how frantic she was on the phone, the operator, thank you, had trouble like processing it. And when the operator put out the call, they did it not as a break-in, but as a disturbance. And so one of the theories is that the cops didn't respond as quickly as they could have because they didn't think it was an actual
emergency. Yeah.
They just thought like somebody was like, a neighbor was being loud or something, as opposed to somebody was breaking in. While the police were on the way, they quickly realized that it was an emergency because other people in the building started calling saying that they had heard gunshots.
Yes.
And so by the time that they arrived to the scene, they try to get into the apartment, but they don't have the right keys. And so they don't break in the door. And so they leave.
I don't know if this is just an issue with incompetency, or is it a race thing of
Probably both.
not trying.
Yeah. For one time in the history of police, they don't break down a black person's door to get in, and
Mind blowing.
this time it really they would have been too late anyway, but
Yeah.
at the very least they would have gained time in finding who did it, because they didn't go back to the apartment for a couple of days, because one of Ruthie Mae's neighbors was someone she said hello to twice a day, every day, for as long as she lived there. And then one day, Ruthie Mae wasn't there.
Yeah.
And then this neighbor calls and says there's something wrong. And they go inside and they immediately notice the smell. And that's something that is recreated in not in the same scene that's referencing what happened to Ruthie, but in the bathroom scene in the film, where the smell hits you before anything else. And then they found her lying in a pool of blood with multiple gunshot wounds and obviously dead. They found a couple of guys that had been breaking into other apartments through the same cabinet method, but they were not found guilty. So to my knowledge, over 30 years later, her murder is still unsolved. But one thing that it did help inspire, which did help to end some of these problems, was that it helped get the film. It helped inspire the film to be made. So in addition to this specific incident of Ruthie Mae McCoy, the film is obviously inspired by at this point close to 400 years of racial violence, and specifically over 100 years of lynching and police brutality. Something that numerous cast members have talked about in interviews is that while they were filming, there was the Rodney King incident.
Yeah, the LA riots was not that long after the filming started. A few years? I don't remember when the riots happened.
It was in 92.
Oh, it was the same year. Okay.
Yeah. The riots happened immediately after the acquittal of the police who were on camera beating Rodney King. This history of racial violence, I mean, when it comes to lynchings, the NAACP has on record about 4,200 lynchings between 1882 and 1968.
That's 4,200 more lynchings than there should be.
Yeah, and of course that's not the exact amount, because the exact number can never be known.
Oh no, God no!
Since there were so many that were not documented, and about 72% of those lynchings happened to African Americans, and so this history is where the story of Victor Robitaille begins. The character infamously played by Tony Todd.
You say infamously. I say beautifully.
Oh yeah,
Tony Todd's awesome.
Yeah, no, this is a role, and I guess this was something I was definitely gonna bring up at some point. He's providing the first great black monster.
We're not talking about Blackula here. We're talking about
no. This is like someone who stands alongside the Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, and even Tony Todd would go along saying he wanted to do the film because he wanted to do his own Phantom of the Opera. Yeah, and you can very much
he's a tragic hero.
How that's invoked, and just this is a very gothic film.
Yeah, He's absolutely like a Dracula type of figure.
Oh, very much so.
And
He's menacing, but he's kind of sexy.
yeah, and he's like elegant.
Yes.
And the character of Robitaille was a painter.
The son of a slave.
Yeah.
Who his father was able to be brought up in the world by his own hand. You know, he made his own success, and his son, which is Todd's character, manages to make that same success being a very good painter.
Yeah. And in the years after the Civil War, Robitaille makes his living from doing portraiture
Of rich white people.
Yeah. And so one rich guy asks Robitaille to paint his daughter,
Mm-hmm.
this very elegant blonde woman, and naturally the two fall in love. And she gets pregnant, and her name was Caroline.
Yep.
And
In the context of the film, this is all explained by a
voiceover.
This happened in the there's like two like expositions about him. Are you talking about the beginning of the film, or are you talking about when the professor guy, who I called the knockoff Stephen Fry, which is why I did that intro?
Yeah,
because he looks like Stephen Fry with long hair.
Mm-hmm.
Am I getting ahead of myself?
Maybe.
Okay, continue. I apologize.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. So we have this free. I mean, to say free is not even. I mean, this is after the Civil War.
Yep.
So we have a
innocent.
Yeah, we have a
whose
black man.
Only
with
crime is being in love with a white woman. Oh no.
Yeah. And so the father decides to make this not happen, and he does so by getting a lynch mob together,
Mm-hmm.
and they.
No, this part is explained by discount Stephen Fry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
it doesn't matter. Continue.
And the lynch mob takes Robitaille. They saw off his painting hand,
Right hand, the rusty saw.
Yeah. They cut the hand off, and then they take a bunch of honey from a beehive, and they smear it all over him, and then they let loose the bees.
The bees, not the bees.
The bees. And the bees eventually sting him to death because there are hundreds of them. But before he is killed, he puts a curse on.
I don't remember the curse bit.
Yeah. He says that he will get his revenge.
Oh, okay. I guess that's.
Like.
That's curse you can get.
Yeah. I mean, considering what he does, that's, and so then, because he is shown himself in the mirror, he ends up trapped in it to an extent.
Kind of.
Like,
it's weird.
Yeah, like it's because of being shown himself in the mirror then becomes a vehicle for him to enter into our world. Yeah. And so we have that, and then we fast forward to the early 90s, and we have a graduate student
who I call discount Gillian Anderson.
Now this is before. So if anything,
she looks a lot like, or Gillian Anderson looks a lot like her.
If anything, Gillian Anderson's like a step removed.
Yeah,
from Virginia Madsen.
She was first, I guess, because X-Files was like a year after. Okay, fine. Yeah, I just know Gillian Anderson more.
But yeah, no, we have Virginia Madsen's character Helen as a grad student working on urban legends, and
who's her partner is the same actress who is quote Jodie Foster's you could call a partner in Silence of the Lamb.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The other girl that she talks to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so her thesis is looking at urban legends, and she's very, very much trying to do something that's never been done. She's trying to do the best work that like anyone has done.
Candyman.
Yeah. And so her husband is a professor.
Trevor.
Yeah.
Who's played by Xander
Berkeley.
Yeah. He's really good at playing assholes.
Yeah.
Because a year prior, he was John Connor's adopted dad in Terminator 2.
Oh my God.
And he plays Jack Bauer's boss in
24.
The first 2 seasons of 24.
There you go.
He's kind of an asshole, but he's a better human being than both of these people.
Yeah.
That he plays in T2 and especially in Candyman.
Yeah. So Trevor, so all of this is happening at University of Illinois, Chicago.
Hey, Chicago, you think there's alligators in the sewer in 92?
That what's hilarious is that in the beginning of the film, Trevor is telling his class of undergrads
about urban legends.
And one of the things he specifically mentions is alligators in the sewer.
He watched the film. He watched Alligator.
He did. He was probably like, man, I'm going to write my thesis on this. And so we have, at the very beginning, we have a academic understanding of urban legends, and that this horror movie is not going to be so much about the killing as it is going to be about understanding.
Yeah.
The killing.
Kind of understanding the myth.
Yeah. Like this
isn't no Friday the 13th slasher.
No, it's a detective story.
It is.
Like it's a scholastic detective story where someone actually goes through microfilm.
Yes.
In order to learn things.
Mm-hmm.
That's Helen uses microfilm to find out about the Ruthie Jean murder. We have a moment that happens in all 3 of the original films where...
Yes, I haven't watched the other 2. You have.
Yeah. So it's really, really kind of cool that the way that he's invoked, it's always the same. Somebody challenges someone else and it's like instant. They're like, I bet you won't say it. And the person's like, fuck, I guess I gotta say it. And so then they do it, but it's always like very early in the film. It's like never, like you don't spend all of this time like building up, like when are they gonna say it? It's like, oh, you said it and now it's happening.
And we got little tease right in the first scene of the film. We have 2 people got by Candyman, which is a woman and a surprise Ted Raimi cameo, Sam Raimi's brother.
Yeah.
Who's going all greaser. He's cool. He's badass.
Yeah.
And they do the Candyman thing and she gets killed. And I'm going to be honest, the jump scare got me.
Yeah.
I jolted like,
See, what's great about the first kill is that it happens to show the retelling of the myth.
Yeah, because it's done over voiceover of a student that Helen is interviewing,
and this is one of the great, like this is one of the all-time great movies. It just period. Like it's just I mean everything just fucking works.
I know.
And
it's the slow burn detective horror that's always the best.
And it's so with between the voiceover being used as a way to tell the audience directly a story.
Yeah.
It's contributing to how we get our information throughout the entire film.
Mm-hmm.
That we get bits and pieces, not just from someone discovering something, but from somebody asking someone.
Yeah.
At one point, Helen interviews 2 of the cleaning ladies at the university, And what's really interesting is that the first woman overhears what Helen's doing.
Yeah.
And then she says, "Oh, my friend knows about that."
Yes. It's so fascinating how this mythos of the Candyman is, it's like well known.
Yeah.
It's like this universe is this world's version of Bloody Mary. It's just everyone knows about it.
Exactly. We get the story not all at the same time. We don't get it in chronological order. We don't get it. We don't know necessarily what's actually happened.
Yeah.
But we know things have happened. Like the opening story involving the
Ted Raimi.
Yeah. We don't know that
Actually happened.
Yeah.
Or if it was the Candyman, it could just be what it is, a story.
Exactly.
But then we get the Ruthie Mae.
Yeah. And so
that was an actual murder that happened by a supposed man through a window, very much like how Candyman does it.
Exactly. And so Helen and her friend Bernadette, who's also a grad student, the two of them investigate the apartment.
Yes, they investigate Cabrini Green, which in Helen's very nice, lofty uptown Chicago apartment, they can see Cabrini Green right there.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing of like the rich white woman can see down on the poor black people.
Mm-hmm. The going between worlds is something that the film does without having to say it, because you can't say that. You have to show it.
Yeah.
And it is literally showing Helen, who is getting a graduate degree and is at least like
upper middle class.
Yeah. I think part of that's more on the husband, on Trevor, since he's a professor.
Yeah.
Because as a grad student, there's no...
It's weird because like Helen seems much older than the grad students that he's teaching.
Oh, well, he's teaching undergrads.
Okay.
That's why. Yeah.
Mind. I guess you don't have to be a certain age to be a grad student.
Also, she's like 30.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, yeah, 30. It's me thinking you have to, right after college when you're like 23, you go into grad school.
Yeah. No, I think she, like at the youngest, she's like 25 or 26.
Okay.
Yeah. She just looks older because everyone looked older.
Yeah, that's the thing.
She dresses professionally. Her and Bernadette are very nice dressers. So we have her like going into an environment, into Cabrini Green, where as Bernadette says, she doesn't even like to drive by it.
Yes. Cabrini Green, it's not murder capital of the world, but there was a lot of gang violence there. And the film crew literally, actually, and genuinely filmed at Cabrini Green. They had to have like cops dressed in plain clothes in case anything happened. The quote unquote actors that Helen and Bernadette walk by, actual Cabrini Green gang members. They live there. It was like there was some reports of like their van being shot at and stuff like that. So it was like it was real. Yeah.
Yeah. And
everything, all the other like interior stuff of the apartments are sets and stuff. But that moment right there, they actually shot it there.
And so when they're inside and they go into the apartment and they open up the cabinet, they see...
Yeah, they go into Ruthie Jean's apartment.
And they see the medicine cabinet with a giant hole in the middle that a person can fit through. And so she goes into the other apartment and like literally goes through a hole into this other world.
Yes. So on the other side of the wall in the hole, there's a giant Candyman mural.
Yeah.
The hole is his mouth.
Yeah.
And beneath it is like a shrine.
Yeah.
An offering of candy.
Yeah.
They don't really explain that, but I don't think they have to because I don't know if that's I guess that's just people around the apartment like thinking, oh, if we give him candy, he'll go away.
Sweets to the sweet.
Sweets to sweet, which is
Biblical.
I was watching the YouTube channel Kill Counter, and I think the guy references the Hamlet quote. I think,
but the source of that is is also
biblical.
But yeah, it's
so he looks at the candy, and the candy has tasty razors.
Because that's part of the myth, is that one of the ways that he's able to lure children into his grip is by offering them, obviously, candy.
Okay.
And this is like, I guess this myth is also happening at the same time as the myth of be careful about going trick-or-treating because there's going to be razor blades in the candy.
Did that ever actually really happen?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay.
It's just one of the many ways, again, just like all these other urban legends. It scares you from doing something because you're not, it's a form of control.
Yeah.
So if you are warned against taking candy from people, you won't go to strangers' houses.
Right.
So you won't get kidnapped and like murdered, and
well, who's the sick son of a bitch who put razor blades in these candies for an unsuspecting child to go up and like, ooh, candy. Oh God.
That's exactly some people just want to watch the world burn. So the candy and the razor blade is also kind of like foreshadow of what happens to the child.
We should point out that Helen's constantly taking pictures to document. He's taking the pictures of the candy, of the mural, of like Ruthie's apartment and all that.
She tries to go through, blacks out.
I forgot about that.
And she comes to, and this is something that happens numerous times in the film.
Yeah. Which is like coming from just a normal human being. Scary. Blacking out in general and like losing time, frightening.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Losing consciousness is
or like blacking out but not knowing you have done something.
Yeah.
Even more so.
And that's something that Helen finds herself in
many times.
Too much. And whenever Virginia Madsen has that dazed look in her eyes.
Yes, I was hoping we'd get to this.
She was hypnotized.
Literally, the director hypnotized her every time.
Yeah.
It reminds me of when Werner Herzog was doing a film. I forget the title of it. Like, for the entire film process, he hypnotized the entire cast. Which is like, I don't know how ethical that is, but it's Werner Herzog, so what are you going to do?
I don't know how you
I want to make a film where I hypnotize my cast members.
Like, that doesn't seem manageable. Like, I can't imagine controlling that many people, whereas like with one person.
Yeah. Apparently, Victoria at some point decided that I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, like towards the end of the film, and she was like, we don't need to do this.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable.
Yeah. But prior to that, she's actually
hypnotized.
And there were certain scenes involving her and Tony Todd and a bunch of bees.
Oh yeah. Oh, we're gonna talk about that now?
No, later. I'm gonna talk about the bees later.
We're gonna tease you.
Tease
that'll
with
come
bees.
out. So he wakes up.
Yeah, she wakes up and then there's a dog barking.
Yes.
And it's the next door neighbor who has a giant Rottweiler.
That's it. He's a good boy. You shut your mouth.
I'm just saying, he's a giant Rottweiler. He's massive.
I have affinity for Rottweilers because I had one growing up.
Like he's just huge. Like
good boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So they go into her apartment just to chat because he lived right next to Ruthie's apartment when she died, and what a beautiful contrast because her entire wall and doors covered in the Sweets for Sweet graffiti.
Yeah.
But you open the door, it's a pretty nice apartment. It's all colorful.
Yeah. The character played by Vanessa Williams, she has like a little baby.
The most adorable baby I've ever seen in a film.
Anthony.
He's not fussy. He's just making gurgly noises, and he's cute.
Yeah. we learn, some more about Ruthie.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I don't know, to kind of like go throughout this, throughout the film, we have you mentioned the graffiti.
Yeah.
That yeah, like the door into her apartment is actually covered by Sweets to the Sweet, and in a way similar the to the oral history, of the myth being passed around during the film. One of the other ways that the story is told without even having to tell it is through all of the graffiti.
Yeah.
Like whether it's the murals of him,
Mm-hmm.
or the first time that we hear Sweets to the Sweet, or we don't even hear it, we see it.
Yeah.
Like the first time we encounter it, it's through seeing it. And so it's important that we pay attention to street art.
It's just this weird thing of this little slice of society is so affected by
Mhm.
this one story that its culture's almost wrapped around it.
Yeah. And especially this housing project cannot escape. The thing about the art that I just that I want to stress is that as an urban legend, this is a story that belongs to a community, and the way that a community shares how it's thinking, how it's feeling, what it is through folk art.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, luckily, over the past like decade or so, in the art community, is that graffiti has been taken more seriously than it was
Because
prior.
during the 90s, even the 80s, graffiti, and to be fair, graffiti was kind of ugly. It was just names tagged and stuff. You didn't really get
even
into the...
even that.
Yeah, even that invokes like there's a purpose for it. It could be a game thing or just a moniker or something. But now you're at this point where many cities, we've seen murals in
Mhm.
like San Diego and Los Angeles that are massive and are very pretty. And
Yeah. And these are ways for artists who don't have the opportunity to express themselves in a way that'll fit into the average museum.
right,
It's essential, and so the film is not shying away. It's actually forcing you to look at things that the average person who lives in a metropolis
would avoid.
is not going to look at.
They're just walk by it.
Yeah, like you see it either on the sides of buildings or trains, whatever,
Mhm.
in subways. It's like visual white noise,
Yeah,
but here the film is making you look
because
because it's actually telling the story.
yeah,
Like it's as much of like all of this, like this entire film is just
Cabrini
like
Green is as much as a character as
absolutely,
anyone else in the film.
absolutely, and it's something that we have to consider alongside everything else with the way that the story is visually told.
Mm-hmm.
It's also just beautiful, like all the murals of him,
Yeah,
and like the mural at the end of Helen, like gorgeous, and these are just things that would go unseen by so many people because it's just in an abandoned apartment,
Yeah.
or on the side of an abandoned building, or in a neighborhood that people don't want to go to. And like that's the way that idea of graffiti being a sign that a neighborhood is declining,
right.
or has declined.
Which is not always the case, but for Cabrini Hills, it was actually in decline. And by the time the film finished, and for the next 20 years, up to 2011, they would be spending that time demolishing
Yeah.
all of the buildings at Cabrini Green.
It, thankfully. I in a way, and in other ways not so much, which is what the new iteration of this story deals with directly, which is I mean, it's just the gentrification, just as another way of perpetuating racial violence and racial control.
Because at whatever point Cabrini Green was constructed, the buildings and the rooms were very nice. Those who moved in really liked them, but some point they were more or less abandoned. Like they weren't given the maintenance they were required, and it just kind of the city built it for them, and then they turned a blind eye, and that's how it became what it became in the film and onwards. This kind of not a good place to live, but it wasn't everyone. It was just people satelliting around it and other people just wanting to get through the day and live their lives, having to deal with like 5 gangs like circling this neighborhood.
Yeah. I guess the thing, instead of looking at necessarily like a blow by blow account of what happens, I guess just what's more important is just the thematic concerns.
Yeah, we can't quickly go through it. We'll take like 30 seconds. So they meet the neighbor. She talks about the Candyman, and then Helen goes back to Cabrini Green to do more picture taking. She meets his little boy, and he says he knows where the Candyman is, and he goes into you keep talking about the bathroom, and the boy says that a boy was killed by the Candyman. And he goes in, and there's Sweet to the Sweets written in poop. He takes pictures, and the last stall she takes is bees, and it freaks her out. And then these 5 guys come in, and it's a guy who says he said you were looking for Candyman, bitch. And he has a hook and trench coat, and he hits her. She goes to police.
Yeah.
Very helpful police, and they arrest the guy. So it's halfway film done. Got the Candyman. Candyman wasn't real. But then you have your psycho moment where halfway through, Candyman appears to Helen. And we should have pointed out that Helen and Burnett had done the Candyman mirror thing beforehand. He's unhappy that she let the myth die. Because it's not that. It's not about Candyman himself doing the murders and stuff with Ruthie and her, because it turned out to be this one guy that they arrested. It's the fact that he was able to absorb the idea of name having power.
That's one of the most important things, is that the myth has to keep going.
Yeah.
Because the myth exists in order to serve as a reminder
of transactions that have taken place now and in the past.
Yeah, it's this this history of racial violence, and so to
forget the myth is to forget what caused the myth in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. And so like that's why one of the things, like, Tony Todd doesn't have that many different lines, but there are a few lines that he says numerous times. And
be my victim.
Be my victim. I think the most important one that he says is believe in me.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it necessarily has to be that like the issue is believing in whether or not he exists. It's believing in the problem that he represents.
Right.
Like this is like all of this is about racial violence. And so to have like not believing in him is to say that the problem doesn't exist.
Right.
Like that's what the myth is working on. And so we have this character who's not like he's a monster in the sense of like Dracula's monster.
Yeah.
But he's not a villain because his violence is being enacted on people who don't believe.
Right.
Because the only ones who say his name are the ones who don't believe in him. Because if they believed in him, they wouldn't say his name.
Yes.
And so it's like the violence that's being done upon him again is not just the disrespect of no longer existing, but it's also the violence of erasure.
Mm-hmm.
And so he comes back, and the only way that he can exist in the physical world is to kill.
Yeah.
It's like that's what ushered him out, and that's what brings him back in.
Mm-hmm.
He says, what is blood for if not for shedding?
That's such a good line.
Yeah.
That's a Clive Barker line, if I ever heard one.
Like, that's like, by spilling this blood, he is forcing you to confront the reality that he represents.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the ways that, like, that's one of the many reasons that this is so essential.
And it's very interesting that the only time that police and law and authority comes in is when blood is spilled.
Yeah.
For good and for bad, it's like the connotation of like places like Cabrini Green is only ever thought of when, blood is spilled.
And that's something that the film is trying to get you to not shy away from.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of making something impossible to hide. And so I think like that's why so much of the storytelling is done in visual.
Yeah.
Like the imagery of it is so strong, like not just with the bees or the hook or, the way that he guts people from groin to gullet.
Yeah.
But just all of the graffiti, the painting of Robitaille, the condition of Cabrini Green, the very muted and industrial architecture of the university,
Mm-hmm.
like all of it is so important. But the most important piece of imagery is the one that's in front of our face, like the entire movie, and that's the fact that there is a very large black man intimidating a white woman. This is a tradition in storytelling that by the time of the film is well over 100 years old.
Yeah.
It is absolutely playing on the fear that so many people have when it comes to black men and white women.
Mm-hmm.
And the irony is that the one person that he never hurts is Helen.
He stabs her in the neck. After Helen wakes up from her blackout when she first meets Candyman, and she gets arrested because she is believed to have stolen the baby and killed the dog. She comes back to the apartment and the Candyman comes back. When she's lying on the floor on the refrigerator, he takes his hook and stabs her right at the neck. You can see blood trickling down her. I know I'm being facetious, but
yeah, well, he didn't. No, but I mean, like he doesn't kill her. Like he doesn't. Like he at any point in time he
was going to.
Didn't like it's like he could have.
Right, and you're right. At any time in the film, he could have just easily,
like literally the first moment that he sees her but because she looks like Caroline, I mean, it's Vertigo as well. Like it's so many things of trying to reclaim like the one thing like that. Like this is part of what makes him a tragic hero.
Yeah,
is that he's trying to reclaim the only thing he ever loved.
Yeah.
He keeps giving her chances. He's like, believe in me, come with me. The only thing I want is you. Like all of these things. Like he says these things that like you put them in a different context and they're romantic.
That's the weird thing. I was talking about how like Candyman's kind of sexy. He's suave.
Yeah. No, like Tony Todd like is just this very stoic man, and he towers above everyone else. Like he has that incredibly gorgeous jacket.
Mm-hmm.
He has those nice shoes that are never creased somehow.
Yeah.
And cool pants. Yeah, and he just he wears a white shirt that like Dracula would have.
Yep.
And yeah, like I think like that moment where he causes her to bleed is like it's like he's having to restrain himself from like doing what he does to literally everyone else.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And like so that's why I was like,
or it's more like maybe a reminder to Helen, like,
yeah, like I could literally end, like I could kill you. I could have killed you like an hour ago. But no, like he wants to make her immortal.
mm-hmm.
You know, he makes death enticing to her.
I know.
He says, you know, that like just wait till you've tasted the ecstasy of death.
Yeah.
Like he is selling her for so long on trying to join him.
Very much how like the Cenobites are kind of making unbridled agony and torture enticing and euphoric.
He doesn't like the movie would have been over a lot sooner
if we just went
or if Helen had just said yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in a way he gets what he wants anyway. With how she's immortalized with the mural.
Yep.
In the same way that he is. You know, unfortunately once again, and this is the tragedy, like his love is his downfall in the beginning,
mm-hmm.
and it's his downfall in the end. And I think like the way that all of that subverts the almost traditional way of thinking that so many have when it comes to looking at the dynamic between black men and white women. Maybe the most telling thing is that when everyone else sees him, they scream. Helen is the only one who doesn't scream.
She's entranced by him.
Yeah. Like there's something, like he's tapping into something and she feels in him something else.
Danger,
yeah.
Yes, but she's an allurance.
Yeah, like she doesn't see the monster. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that she is, you know, that she's a grad student who's trying to understand this history.
She does scream murderer in his face while he's strapped to a bed. So
yeah. But by that time, she has seen him a couple of times.
Kill her best friend.
Yeah. Yeah. By that time, like but like in the parking lot.
In the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't really know what to make of it.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that when he appears to everyone else, he's very close to them.
Yeah.
Usually, literally right behind them,
mm-hmm.
so that he can just gut them before they even realize that he's there.
Yep.
But with her, he appears like all the way at the other end of the parking garage. She can't. The one of the first things that she says is like who are you? Like
who is that?
Who is it? Yeah. You know, like she can't see who it is, which means he's far enough that she can't realize that that's a hook for a hand.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very Phantom of the Opera moment.
Yeah.
Of I want to be close, but I don't want to scare you.
Yeah.
But I want to be near you, but I don't want you to be terrified of me.
Yep. It's
yeah.
Yep. Helen's his Christine Dyer.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and like that's really beautiful. And I think that's like, yeah, he kills people, You know?
So, I mean, so does a Phantom.
Yeah, he's not a villain.
He is, but he's not.
I would say I would call him more. He's a monster because monster allows the room to be misunderstood.
Oh, okay.
But I think a villain would be, because there's no hero in this story.
No.
So
I mean, Helen's kind of the hero. It's that weird dynamic of like, she doesn't really deserve this, but she did do the Candyman ritual. So it's almost like that, not knowing what you're messing with.
yeah, that's something that doesn't remove any sort of like heroic status, but like there's no. I mean, with the exception of saving Anthony at the end.
Yeah, which kind of taps into the white savior thing. It kind of misses a beat or two.
I don't know, because like, I mean, the baby, like he was gonna die. Like he was just there in the pile. You know, it's not like the infant was like, you know, at home with his mother and she was like, I'm gonna save you from poverty. You know, it's like I feel like saving a child from a potentially burning pile of garbage. You know, it doesn't necessitate white saviorhood, but you know, I think it could have very easily been that. Like it could have been presented as that.
Right.
I think the third one kind of gets into that, kind of, but it's more conscious of it, and so it's like it's playing around with it. But there's something that I really like. You just can't not talk about with this, and it's the bees.
Not the bees.
We have to talk about.
They're in my eyes, Matthew. They used what? 200,000 bees?
Over
200,000 bees?
All real. Like, this is what's amazing. Like, not only is there a bee wrangler,
yes,
but there's an assistant bee wrangler.
And like a lot of the bees, especially on Victoria Madison's body, they were very young, so their sting hadn't developed or wasn't as potent. So she didn't get stung. On the other hand,
Tony Todd,
he got paid $1,000 for each sting.
Yeah.
And he got stung 26 times.
One of the brilliant moments of makeup is whenever the bees come out of his mouth.
Yeah, they use like a protective guard in his mouth.
Yeah. And they're the moment where she cuts his cheek open and the bees come out.
I don't remember that bit.
And so she cuts him, and you know, like bees are coming out of his face, and he's like laughing because, you know, what is this going to do to me? It's like, you just released more bees. Like,
you fool, you made me stronger.
Yeah, is that the bees really do look like they're coming out of his face, the same way that like they look like they're coming out of his body.
Yeah, the chest makeup special effects is
fantastic.
great. It's by the same guy who did the Hellraiser stuff.
Yeah.
And if you haven't watched Hellraiser, you don't know what I'm talking about. If you do, you know what I'm talking about. And makeup special effects for Hellraiser is amazing.
The way that it's able to, the way that they were able to make these prosthetics look like part of his face, part of his body.
Did you see like his organs moving and beating?
Yeah, no, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And like, and again, like, it's not just that they have to make these prosthetics or like to whatever, like they have to make them in a way that bees can interact with them.
Yeah,
like,
apparently a lot of the bees still didn't really like the prosthetics, and that's where he got stung a lot, is in the chest area.
Yeah. So one of the, in addition to using bees who were only a couple of weeks old and didn't have these fully developed stingers, the chief bee wrangler developed a queen bee pheromone.
He did, yeah. Sprayed it on Victoria.
Yeah, and this pheromone prevented all of the drone and worker bees from stinging because they're not going to sting the queen.
Yeah.
And so it's like this like safeguard.
Mm-hmm.
But with the scenes involving the bees coming out of Tony Todd's mouth.
What a trooper.
Yeah, like he just had this mouth guard, but then also like there are bees coming out of his, like on his face, and then he has to like dump, like they're just like dumping bees onto both of them. Because they're like supposed to come out of his, you know, out of his mouth, and like the fact that there are hundreds of bees involved in any given scene.
None were hurt.
Somehow, and like you can't control them. Like you can invite them via this pheromone, but like you can't tell them what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And like Tony Todd said that in one of the takes where he's supposed to kiss her with the bees in his mouth,
mm-hmm.
before that scene, Bernard Rose went to hypnotize her.
Yeah.
And it was taking a while. And he's got these bees in his mouth, and he has to close his mouth so that they don't escape.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like, and then they're just like,
Tony Todd, as we've said before, is fucking awesome.
Yeah. And then to get the bees back, the bee wrangler developed like a vacuum cleaner.
I don't know if he developed it or is that just what bee wranglers use, because I've seen that before. But they're just like
yeah, just like a little like,
and they're fine. The bees are fine.
Yeah, like it just vacuums them right up. And so the bees being real help to add to the very disturbing, realistic atmosphere that's throughout the entire film.
Yeah.
That because the bees are real, you're like, holy shit. Like when the toilet opens
mm-hmm.
and Helen just sees all these bees. I mean, I'm terrified of bees just because they're unpredictable.
I mean, the film literally opens up with a menagerie cloud of bees across the cityscape.
Yeah. And you get a nice little like Psycho reference with the eye,
mm-hmm.
like an inverted, I guess going like counterclockwise.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, all of these bees, like being a threat very much in the way that he is a threat.
Yep.
Of like, if you leave them alone, they're not going to fuck with you.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
if you leave Candyman alone,
you're like fine. Yeah, like don't invoke him. He won't come and kill you. Don't go around to bees and like swat at the hive.
No.
Like, why would you do that?
What are you, stupid?
Yeah, exactly. So, it's just like it's one of those things that, now nobody would use like 250,000 bees.
No, they'd all be CG.
Yeah, and it would look terrible.
Christopher Nolan would.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah. What Candyman is doing, damn it, that's the second time. I can't say it again. That's it. No more.
You fool.
I know.
It's like Beetlejuice rules.
Yeah, really. Both of these movies, by addressing these two issues, they want you to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they want you to reflect. And I think what's really bold is that both of them offer numerous reflective surfaces where you have no choice.
But to stare at it.
Alligator less, a little bit more subtle, with the reflective surface being the water at any point.
That's some murky water.
Yeah. Which says something. It's not clean or clear. Yeah. Where are you, Clear Water Act? But then all of the mirrors in the other film. And there's no way that you can avoid the issue when you're looking in a mirror.
It's that white guilt. Maybe not so much, but
I think instead of guilt, it's the acknowledgement.
Okay, that's better.
I think that's he doesn't want you to feel bad. He doesn't want you to forget.
Yes. Okay.
And I think those are two very different things.
Better phrasing than what I said.
And I think that with both of these, we get the play of violent nature, the nature of violence, and also like our own violent natures.
Yes.
And so these are movies that show us people being killed, not for the gratuitous sense of like having bloodshed, but because our actions have consequences.
Yeah.
And both of these problems are things that didn't just spring up yesterday. Like this isn't, these aren't things that we can point to one person or one thing and say that this is the problem. Like there is a collective culpability. And I think by doing this, we were able to have these experiences that kind of keep us in check.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, I think that's what like the presence of, especially of like Tony Todd, like you can't turn away from that. By the end of the film, when Helen has to choose between the life of a baby and her own, to give in order to sacrifice, almost like a blood sacrifice.
Yeah.
You can't continue the ride without paying for the
ticket.
Yeah. And everyone has to pay their due.
Yeah.
As a society, we have to pay our due. And especially this film is not literally letting anyone off the hook.
No.
Like it's putting you on the hook. It is holding you up. Those deaths are not swift. There's a reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like he is making, more importantly, more than just killing someone, he's making someone else watch.
Yeah.
And more often than not, the person who's watching is Helen.
Look what you did.
And look what's going to continue happening unless you join me.
Yeah.
The longer you try to avoid your inevitable fate, the more destruction, the more death is going to happen. And like that's a very powerful message to put into any story, let alone to one that takes an urban legend and puts it in the middle of a housing project and just runs with it. This is also like a subtle thing that tells us that we're not supposed to be afraid of him in a certain way, or we can't pretend that we know like when he's going to pop up.
Yeah.
And I think one of the ways, and I think this is brilliant that we don't get that, is that Philip Glass's music doesn't.
His score is
It's gorgeous,
beautiful.
Yeah. No, it's
simple piano and organs, but it's in a choir.
And a choir, yeah.
There's nothing. I never found it really scary. Maybe
it's not supposed to be.
I know. Maybe there were a few points where it's like, ooh, a bit ominous, but it's beautiful.
It never lets on to what's about to happen, and so we don't get, we don't get the tubular bells. We don't get the score to Jaws.
Nope.
We don't get heads up that the monster's coming, because it doesn't, like in kind of like a realistic way. Like the film is saying like things don't work that way.
I think with every kill and jump scare, the jump scare of like his arm cocaine going through the mirror and stuff, and him killing the psychiatrist, there's no music behind it.
No,
it's out of nowhere.
And that's ballsy.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's just pretty standard that the music is supposed to coincide with the anticipation.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, if we have this very gentle and very circular score,
very gothic.
It's like a lullaby.
Yeah, almost.
And it's the main theme is the music box.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And it just like it puts you in a not a false sense of hope or anything like that, but just like into a sense of calm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing about that is that there are moments where that sense of calm is disrupted by these bursts of violence.
Yeah,
just exactly what happens in the film. Like things are fine, people are just talking to each other. There's, for numerous moments throughout the film, the worst thing that's happening is that Helen suspects that Trevor's cheating on her with an undergrad,
which he is.
Yeah. And so like, there are numerous scenes where like that's the biggest drama.
Mm-hmm.
And then boom, here he comes, another person's dead. And then we get a little lull, you get more of the music, false sense of calm, and then outbursts. The same way that these, that these moments of violence completely disrupt any sense of calm in
everyday life.
Yeah. It's an absolutely powerful effect. Speaking of effect, the legacy that these two movies have is not only still alive, obviously, I mean, people are still watching them.
We recently had a Candyman remake.
Yeah. I think it more is a direct sequel to this one.
Yes, I think so too.
Because the other two don't exist. It's doing the thing that...
Doing what Halloween did.
Yeah. And
at least it didn't have 50 films to erase.
Yeah. And with Alligator, I mean, we were just talking about Crawl the other day. There's a movie about a giant alligator.
There's I think Indian film, Bollywood film, I think called Pool, about big crocodile as well.
If you look on Wikipedia at nature horror movies by subject, you'll see that alligators and crocodiles are one of the largest subcategories of animals represented in these movies.
Well, it's because the shark, obviously.
The shark's close to, I think, second, I think.
What's the first?
The alligators and crocodiles.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
maybe because you can have both the underwater horror
and land.
Yeah, land horror.
And I mean, you got to figure there's how many Lake Placid movies? At least 2.
There's like 3.
There's 3?
3 or 4.
Yeah. Then there's like a couple of like Australian ones, which makes sense because they're massive down there. So like we have these fears don't go away, very much like the myths don't go away. Because of that, they just get stronger. They become even more like, as a kid, I heard about this, and now there's room for a new generation to learn about these things and to not flush alligators down the toilet.
Don't flush Candyman down the toilet.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah, he won't like that.
He will not like that.
Yeah.
You're going to get bees clogged up in your piping and plumbing.
Who wants that? I think that the combination, I mean, like, you could have put any 2 movies with this, but I like the ecological factor with having alligators and bees. We could have done like Mothman Prophecies. Or,
that one's great.
Yeah. There's...
that one's really chilling.
Yeah. In a weird, very weird, like X-File type of...
Like the scene where he's on the phone.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
We could have done Urban Legends, the film.
Yeah.
We could have done Cabin in the Woods. But that would have been like really meta. And it's interesting that this film coming out in 92 when the Nightmare on Elm Street films have, at this point, I think for the moment, have
stopped.
Maybe, I don't know.
Because New Nightmare was
97, 98?
Yeah.
I don't know if Freddy's Dead came out after Candyman, but it's interesting that it's the same idea of this entity needing to have his name alive to be able to function. And there's the fact that what comes after this is Scream, and it very much, the film mythos creates its own mythos. And for some reason, when I watch Candyman, I can see this being a prototype to what Scream would eventually become. There's something about it.
I think it's probably due to the fact that not just the story is actually told to the audience, but it's told in an informative way. Yeah. Like that we open with a professor telling us what urban legends are. And then we are going to witness an urban legend. But before we witness the urban legend, we are also going to learn what that urban legend is. Yeah. And I think with Scream, it's you have a similar sense of, we are going to talk about what makes a horror movie.
A horror movie?
Yeah. And then we are going to show you what makes a horror movie.
We're going to show you the tropes, and then
we're going to do it.
Yeah. But also break the tropes.
Yeah.
And
you build expectation, and then you're able to play with that, because the audience is expecting, oh, you talked about this character being guilty, and then at the end you show that character's not guilty. You're like, oh my God, what happened?
And it's the fact, I think we had briefly mentioned that in this time during the early 90s, slasher films have just been done to death at this point. There's been the 80s saturated with slasher films, and it takes for Candyman a more intellectual approach. And it goes, yeah, we could be a slasher film, but we'll make you think and only have 3 kills.
Yeah.
Very much how Psycho only has 2.
Yeah. So you cannot categorize any of these as serial killer movies because they are not serial killers according to the
Ghosts
FBI.
Can't be serial killers.
Yeah, no, not at all. Yeah, that's I think that is a good way of looking forward to end it.
We can end on a celebration because I don't think we have any connection to The Exorcist this time.
No.
Oh, we did it.
Yeah. Broke the curse.
We broke the curse. We didn't say Exorcist 5 times, and Exorcist did not come in reference.
You just said 3, so that's it. And so that is all we have for you this week, folks, on today's episode of Visceral Reactions.
Yay.
Thank you for joining us, and stick around for next episode's discussion of The Thing and Event Horizon.
We're going into Cosmic Horror, baby.
Yep. I'm Matthew Germanis.
The bees. Oh, the bees. They're in my... I know I've said this 5 times. I couldn't think of a nice quote. I couldn't think of a good, funny quote for this. So I'm just going to go with the bees. Ah, the bees.
And that's a wrap.
See you later.